Right. So we really are talking about feedback. And one of the ways that I try to remember to do feedback is I came up with an acronym called POPSTAR, which is what you see this infographic is. So, and it is rooted in all the pedagogies that need to be, but that's not kind of what I focus in this 30 minutes. This 30 minutes is really about telling you what it is, giving you an example, and what that could mean in D2L. So POP stands for positive. So start with something they've done well. I know sometimes that can be difficult, even unfortunately, to find, but we can usually always find at least something. Opportunity. This is where you can grow and improve your skills, and then ending with something positive, that encouraging note to inspire them with more effort. And so that's where the pop comes in. The star comes in where we want to give very specific feedback so our students understand what we're telling them to do, or showing them to do, asking them to do. It kind of depends on the feedback that you give them. But STAR stands for specific. We want it to be precise and focused on a particular result, right? So the student knows exactly where you're talking about and what the result is that you're looking for by making this change. So it's specific. It's timely. You want to give the feedback quickly so students can apply it. In a semester long class, if you have a heavy, or not, I won't say heavy, a longer paper, then we recommend no longer than 2 weeks if it's a full semester class. But if you can really turn those assignments around in about a week, that's really a good practice so that students can implement and see the feedback that you're giving them before something else is due. So timely. Actionable. What can they do to improve? So you don't just want to be precise and focused, but you actually want to give them an action. What are you asking them to do so that they know that they're improving? Excuse me. Feel like I should have waited a couple minutes. And then respectful, right? You want to foster professional, kind learning tone. Students can feel that even in written feedback, right? So we want to try to make sure that we're being respectful to our students because then they're more likely to accept the feedback we're giving them. So what does this mean, right? So pop star, positive, opportunity for improvement, positive, specific, timely, actionable, respectful, right? So that's what the pop star stands for. And so I thought it would be important to give an example of what that could look like. So if you had a reflection paper that students were doing and you needed to give them feedback, so an example of specific feedback would be something like you've included strong points about the subject's impact on your personal experience, but you didn't connect that to insights to our course concepts, right? Because a lot of times when we're reflecting, it is about ourselves, but we still have to make those connections to the content of what we're learning. And if you're just saying that it made you feel great or happy or whatever it is and not connecting it to the concepts, then you're not really in the spirit of what reflection really means when it comes to connecting it to course materials. Again, timely, within 7 to 10 days of when the assignment is submitted. I will say from my experiences here on campus that most faculty are very good about turning around feedback, usually within that time frame as well. So that 7 to 10 is a good rule of thumb. And again, it does depend also on, are you teaching an accelerated class? Are you teaching a full semester class? That has some impacts on how quickly you would want to hopefully be able to turn around um, grading and feedback. And I say that respectfully because sometimes it's just tough to get it done quickly when you've got so many classes going on. So, actionable. What is an example of what that would mean? So, as it says, in your next excitement, explicitly tie your reflections to at least two key concepts from the course and explain how they influenced your thinking. So, not only you're telling them that they didn't connect these insights to course concepts when you're specific, in your actionable item, you're literally saying, I need you to find these two concepts and explain how they influence your thinking. So you're giving them something actionable. You're telling them, explain this to me. And then, excuse me, respectful.
So,
It's it's always about, right, that feedback applying to your future submissions. So just reminding them, look, I don't give you feedback just to give it to you. This is part of the learning process. So make sure if it's something that you need to apply for future to do so. If you have additional questions, if you're not understanding what I'm saying about implementing it, these are ways that you can show that you're being respectful to the student. Again, just fostering that professional tone, fostering that sense of belonging almost. Belonging is starting to become a very big buzzword. And so fostering that sense of belonging a little bit through that respectful tone when you're giving the pop star feedback. Within D2L, many of you, because I know many of you on the call, know about rubrics. We want you to use rubrics. Rubrics are fantastic. Rubrics help students. Um, but also, whenever you're giving feedback, and specifically when you're trying to, I believe, implement POPSTAR feedback, giving feedback in two different ways, both written using that rubric, but then also including audio or also including video to give a short summation of what you said, or putting in that extra positive opportunity positive so that they can hear your tone. So sometimes, when students, we give them feedback, particularly if you do give them a lot of feedback, it looks like to the student, well, I just did horrible because there's so much feedback. And that's not necessarily the case. So, kind of thinking about that, if you can, whenever you're giving that written feedback, add that extra element of the video, add that extra element of the audio so they can hear your tone, so they can hear that encouragement, they can hear that kindness, and that goes a long way towards students wanting to implement the feedback, being more motivated to implement the feedback because of the way that it was delivered to them and because they have specific actionable things that they can do in a timely manner. So that is the end of this. They're 30 minutes. But I'm going to leave this on the screen and I'm going to share it with you. And now I'm opening it to questions, comments, concerns, any of the above in our last 20 minutes. I went through that pretty fast. Um, what kind of questions might you have? Is there anything about the infographic that doesn't speak to you, that seems out of place, or had you ever heard of referring to feedback in this way before? Anything like that? Any kinds of questions? Yes, ma'am, Anne.
Um, hey,
Hi.
so this, I love the pop star. I just think that is so catchy, and it really, that's really good. To put,
Thank
you
you.
made, I try to do all these things, but that's so cute, the pop star. I'm actually going to share this with my sister who teaches. Um,
Sure.
but one thing that I have had students tell me, I mean, you're saying use the video, use the audio. I've had students tell me they don't, I mean, this is just my students. Some
Uh-huh.
of them may want that and just, for whatever reason, don't articulate it. But they said that they feel uncomfortable doing that, that they don't like leaving video and audio notes and they don't like getting them. So how do you judge that?
So I hear that from students as well, because sometimes, I mean, we know the reason why they take online. There's all kinds of reasons students take online, but sometimes it really does have to do with anxiety or wanting to kind of be more in the background. So I get that that's difficult. When it comes to feedback specifically, I think that you being right, doing the video audio, that should not cause any concerns for them. And I think too, it'll help you connect to your students. I know that's a big thing for you. But when it comes to students leaving audio or video, first off, as a student, I have discovered that audio is tough. It's not as easy as you think because faculty members have the option when it comes to video note to just do audio. Students don't have that option. They only have the video option. I don't know why. Because I was going to do an audio the other day and I couldn't. I had to do a video. Um, but I would, at the very beginning of the class, if there are areas where you do want to see and or hear them in spaces, help them start getting prepared for that early on. One, two, I do tell my students, you have to be okay with being a little uncomfortable. That's part of learning. And it's the virtual environment is going to be here forever, right? So if you can build it into a look, it's not your favorite thing, but it's part of the skills building that we're doing because I know you teach history. So if, especially in gen ed classes, you can connect it to, but you're going to be using probably a lot of this in your future career. You're going to need to know how to be able to communicate in these ways. And so tying it to things like that, so they're not thinking of it as just for I have to do this for an assignment, but it's this is practice for when I get to be a professional in XYZ. That's another tactic I've used that a lot of students, at least it makes more sense, seems to make more sense to them. They didn't tell me it made more sense, but they showed up and I saw their videos. Um, so that's the other thing that I would think of. Karen or Halmeen, do you have any, or any of you, frankly, all of y'all are great. So do any of you have other suggestions about that? Because I've certainly heard that also from other faculty that sometimes they really struggle with students leaving a video. I think that students actually would be more apt to leave an audio for those who are concerned about being on camera. But again, that's not an option as a student. So that's kind of where I'm at. What do you guys think, Karen? I mean, Lando, anything to add?
My thought would be to have them do a test run with you as the instructor,
Hmm.
just to get over the anxiety perhaps that comes with technology.
Hmm.
But to also, again, have them practice just this is what it is. Sometimes it's the fear of the unknown. What's this really going to look like? Now, I would also say that if you do have students who have a strong need not to have their video, or to do it as audio, then what alternatives could you offer where they can express themselves as fully as we think video and audio does? Um, that would be my other comment is have the student help come up with a solution.
Okay.
If that's a possibility.
Thank you, Karen. Excuse me.
Hey Tara, is the audio only feature one of those D2L options that is not turned on for students, or does it just not exist?
I don't know. That I don't actually know.
Okay.
My guess is it probably exists and it's not turned on, but that's just a guess. But usually
Okay.
if it exists in one way, it does exist in the other.
In the
So
other,
that's why
okay.
my guess, right, that's why my guess is leaning that way, but I honestly don't know. I was frustrated that there is no audio option as a student,
Yeah, I
actually.
feel like that should be standard, but I mean, I know we don't control that. I was just curious if it existed or not. I'm
Yeah,
wondering if
that
there's a way for them to do it through Panopto. Can you do Panopto without the camera on and just have audio within D2L?
I,
I believe you
I
can,
think.
but again, what might have to happen is choosing to turn off the camera.
Right,
So
right, right,
again,
right.
I don't know, if that it might not be the most elegant solution, as
Mhm.
a don't choose video. But I know with Panopto that you have your choice of what you see or what can be
Mhm.
seen in a video.
Mhm.
And so my other thought is to put a smiley face sticker over your web camera so that you are then not your presence is not viewed, but your voice would still be there.
Mhm. That's a good idea.
That
Um,
would work
you know,
also,
so
yeah.
and particularly for those students who might not have access to a camera but might have a microphone. I
Mhm.
don't know what that situation is. If you were to unplug your webcam and only had your microphone available, what would the experience be? But I would think, as Tara said, the option should be there.
Mhm.
And the reason it might not be is a good question. But the alternatives, see if from what I recall, video note is not the only recording option. So if need be, a student could record themselves on their phone in their voice recorder in other apps and then upload that file to or attach the file to a discussion board post or to
Mhm.
submit that file to Dropbox. So there might be some other technologies available that might help kind of get past it might be a limitation in D2L specifically.
And then, like I said earlier, I try really hard to connect outside of a university setting as to why we want you to do some of these things for the students, because a lot of times they don't make those connections because they are in D2L or they is for a specific assignment, or so they're not necessarily thinking outside of that narrow space. And when you can get them to kind of think outside of that and think about, but let's talk about these skills and how they're going to potentially be in your profession and when you get into the work world and et cetera, or even higher level classes, depending on what classes you're in. Um, it usually helps students at least to make that connection to say, okay, well, I get why you're at least asking. And that sometimes is the hurdle as well. They just don't understand, well, I'm online. Can I just type? So that's another reason why I suggested that. Other questions? Questions about POPSTAR feedback?
Um,
Comments?
I just have an observation or a struggle, really.
Okay.
Sometimes I find it difficult to start with something positive in the feedback. And, that is when you come across an assignment that's just kind of meh, for lack of a better word. Does
Yeah.
anybody have any suggestions for how to get started on saying something positive when you're not feeling it?
Yeah, for sure. So we want to always start with something even incremental that's on its way. So even if a student is on their way to something that's an insight, they haven't even really fully formed it yet. That could be an example. You're looking at a title, perhaps, if it's, something like an essay, something like a speech. Maybe the title is arresting in a way that's interesting. And then we also have other things to improve. So just get small with what you're trying to locate as someone is struggling mightily or lazily through an assignment that can help us, spur them along in a helpful way. So yeah, just make sure it's genuine. That's the only thing you got to do is whatever the positive thing is, it is real. I do genuinely think this is insightful, or this is creative, or this is right on target. Particularly even down to like a particular line, I'll call it a TKO, total knockout, when I see it. And that alone might be enough to tip the scales for a student.
Absolutely.
Thanks. I mean, because I do some of those things, but your word about being, or your words about looking at smaller things, I tend to look at the macro view. So I'm looking all over. But yes, narrowing my focus, that's great.
And well, and I've even said something about tone before. Like the paper itself wasn't all that great, but the tone of the paper was appropriate for what I was
Yeah.
looking for. So I've even started with tone. You have a
Okay.
great tone to this page. Like finding, like you said, finding that thing, even
Yeah.
if it's really small, finding that
Yes.
thing. Usually you can find a thing, usually. Uh, I say usually. And I saw you had your hand up again.
Yeah, well, I wanted to really reiterate what Lando said was I have gen ed classes. That's all I teach. And some of them are some of God's special little people. And finding that one thing can be hard, but I find that it helps me get a more holistic view of what they're doing and the effort they're putting in. Because a lot of them writing that 200-word discussion post, that's hard for them. That's an effort, and they struggle with reading comprehension. They've never had to use primary sources. They've never had to critically think about history, because don't even get me started on football coaches. But finding that one thing was, you used a source nobody else used. Great job. No one else has brought this up. That's a really great point that you made. I like that you related it to your own life and like the pop star thing. So now let's connect that to what the question was. So there's, even if it's just, hey, great job. Last time you were short 50 words. Now you've gone 50 over the limit. That's an improvement. You're getting more comfortable with it. So now let's work on what you're actually saying. Just even that is for, I've had students email me and say that no one, and this is a sad statement, that no one had taken the time to give them positive feedback. It was always, you're doing this wrong. You suck. Instead of saying, hey, you're doing this right. So let's build on that. So, I mean, for a lot of particularly when they're in gen eds, and if they're first generation college students, just that one supportive statement really can change the way they view themselves in an unfamiliar situation.
100%. I can speak to that as a first generation student who had the professor who was like, everything sucks. And I'd never had anything like that happen to me before when I was in school. So yeah, that's tough because it really is. I mean, think about how you all, I mean, how do we like to get feedback? We don't want to just hear this terrible stuff. You know, we need to hear a little bit of both. We want to work on the things, but gosh, can't you find something good? And really, sometimes it really is. Like she said, oh, you used this source. That was a great source. Didn't think about it. Or, you know, your tone was really great. Things like, or like Lando said, maybe there's a TKO. There's one sentence that's you're like, that's a fantastic sentence for whatever reason, and you focus on that. But as Anne said, if you're constantly just telling them what's wrong and you're never confirming what's right, then they don't necessarily feel confident in what they're doing correct because you haven't told them that they're doing it correctly.
Yeah, I think, some of the best feedback you'll ever hear and see is from athletics. I mean, you think about a coach who just says, "Hey, son, with the elbows up there," and then just walk away, and like suddenly you're transformed, right? So you have to think about the smallness of the feedback. Even, like I said, some of the best coaches are just grunting at kids, grunting and pointing, and then they're like scoring touchdowns. You know what I mean? So be surprised on the empowerment of just a small win. That's really the secret to engagement, actually. It's
Yeah.
not fun assignments. It's not, you know, strategies. It's, oh, I think I'm getting it. And you're going to see students show up every time as soon as that starts happening.
Right, because they're motivated. They're like, "Oh, I am getting it. So now I'm motivated to learn more because I know that I'm learning the way that I should be and whatever this is."
And something
Other,
else that
yeah, go ahead.
something else that a lot of my students have said is, I really, really, really work hard on my feedback and also on the timing of it, getting it turned around, particularly for those that are struggling a little bit. That timing is so critical because if you wait 2, 3, 4 weeks, that learning window has closed. You've moved on to other material. So,
Yep.
I mean, sometimes it takes spending your Saturday and Sunday digging through all that stuff and just pushing through and cranking it out. And what I have done, which might help you, Elizabeth, is I have a Google Doc of little phrases that are positive, going, "Hey, good job," but that address consistent themes that I see in discussions, especially, particularly early in the semester. So instead of having to sit there and type it all out, I can copy and paste, almost as boilerplate of positive feedback that also addresses a consistent issue. Like, yeah, I mean, oh, great job on this, but I need you to read more of your classmates' posts. And hey, I saw that you logged in on Sunday and you were really active on Sunday, but remember, discussion started on Monday. So you need to log in earlier so you can develop a conversation. So maybe that, just come up with some positive statements to work off of, and that'll just give you a start of finding something else to say later. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I actually have a document like that I use. And I just, make it unique to each student because, yeah, all my classes are online.
Mm-hmm.
But all of the strategies and the ideas that you guys have suggested are great. I think I'm at a point where I need to rethink that. So that's all. Just, how you kind of get in a rut sometimes with the way that you're looking at student assignments. So thanks, everybody.
Of course. Yay. Happy to help. We have like 2 or 3 minutes left, and then this one's done. Like I said, I will be sending out this infographic to all of you that are here. Um, but is there any more questions at all specific to PopStar? Or I appreciate, Anne, what you said um, about the infographic and sharing it. Feel free to share. I'm all about sharing. Sharing is caring.
Have y'all gotten any update of whether D2L is gonna have a way for you to see if students read the feedback on discussion evaluations?
No, we don't have anything about that yet. It's not changed like it has for Dropbox assignments like we talked about, so that the feedback shows up in the grade area instead, or with the grades. So, but we look on the boards as we can. as we can, I'll be honest. But we do look on the boards to see what's out there. And I haven't seen anything. Have you? Well, Karen, you've been out, so you probably haven't looked at a D2L board in a minute.
Sorry, no, I have not seen anything on an update on that. It'd be
Mm-mm.
nice. But
It would be so
again, I'm
nice.
fairly sure that I don't know. Tara, have you talked about the pie process before
No,
with
a
D2L?
little, a little bit where you
Yeah,
can, yeah, it's the product
submit,
idea or
yeah,
something idea exchange.
exchange.
Where you literally you go and put your ideas to D2L and then your ideas can be upvoted, added to, etc. And the further up as something goes in Pi, they see it as more of a priority, right? Because more people have either liked it, commented on it, etc. But I haven't seen anything recently to that, but I haven't been on Pi in a minute. But I know they pay attention because I've put things on Pi before that people added to that we now have as features in D2L, whether they were working on that already or not, who knows? But they do pay attention, very much so. And I can include that link because any of you can put something out there. That's what it's for. Any of you can make a suggestion to D2L.
And I have to
Yeah.
say that that's one thing that sometimes is frustrating for me as I spend hours and hours and hours and hours on creating all this individual feedback and they don't read it.
Yeah.
And how I know they don't read it is they don't fix the problem.
Right. Exactly. And again, I mean, gosh, if we could make all students read feedback, well, our jobs would be a lot easier. Um, but they don't. So, and we still spend all that time because we care, and we do know that there are students who really do appreciate that. So, but I also then I'm all about tying everything to the world of work. So even feedback, I tied to the world of work, meaning, okay, you're working on a project. This is your first go round and someone's giving you feedback. Are you going to ignore it? Are you going to ignore what your boss tells you to fix? And then, someone will be like, well, no. Okay. Well, this is your way to practice so that when you get to that point that your boss says, I need you to do X, Y, and Z, you feel better prepared to do it because you've implemented feedback before from other people. So I really started trying to connect everything to the world of work, because students seem to respond to that. Again, that's anecdotal. These are my students, but they seem to respond to, oh, okay, because I'm making it more than just this assignment, this class, this credit, etc. And for some, that's plenty, but for others, we know it's not.